Welcome back to Veteran Lang YouTube channel. I'm attorney Matthew Lang, VA accredited attorney. As always, I appreciate each and one of you for watching the videos, for subscribing, for sharing, for liking and commenting. As we build a platform where we can discuss VA disability to a point that we can make the system smoother and better for everybody involved. So as you can see, if you've seen the videos before, occasionally I do get informal here, and typically that's around certain holidays. We're not really around a holiday, federal holiday at least, where I would be dressed down. So the question is why have I set my favorite purple shirt aside today? And that's because I feel that what better way to talk about a topic that's called informal conferences than to be informal about it. So here you go. You have the non-purple shirt version of me today. I'm going to be giving you just a little bit of summary of what the rules are, what an informal conference looks like, some of the differences of hearing, and some of the things that I have experienced inside of my practice as I do an informal conference with the VA. So let's get down to it. I'm not sure if the answer would be different if you asked everybody the same question. And that question being, what would you say is the biggest difference between an informal conference and a hearing? Now, maybe the answer will be pretty close to the same, maybe not. But I want to give you my answer. This is what I see as the biggest difference between a hearing and an informal conference. A hearing typically allows us not only to give a presentation or discussion of rules and laws and the application of them in the decision process, in the development process. It also allows us to present evidence and testimony when applicable. As an informal conference, we find it is designed more not to submit new evidence, not to provide testimony. It's more for talking through the rules, the laws, and the errors of the decision that was made in the development process to get us there. Things like, did the VA adhere to their duty to assist? Was the duty to notify correct? Did the decision meet its reasons and bases requirement? Whatever the rule may be that we feel failed in the process, it's there to talk about. Now, I would say that this big difference is because the way the rules are really designed. We have the option for a hearing essentially almost every moment in time in the claim process. But we don't always have that informal conference option. When I look at the way the CFR talks about the informal conferences, I find that it is underneath the section for higher level reviews. So typically, I feel that's where we're going to find these informal conferences. And because we typically find it there, that's why there's no additional evidence submitted or testimony, as a higher level review is designed not to allow that process to occur. It's really designed to go through the record as it is with the laws, the rules, review the evidence, the procedures to make sure everything was done correctly. And if it wasn't done correctly, to ultimately send that claim back and get it fixed, or grant or change the effective date or provide a higher evaluation. So I would say that's why we see that difference, and that's what I would say the biggest difference is. Now, I'd be fascinated to hear from anybody in the comments of what they think the biggest difference is between the two, if they're willing to share. I think it'd be kind of great to see some of those differences and help everybody see kind of the different pages we all are on, or if we all have the same answer or not. So how do we get the informal conference for a higher level review? And I'm just going to talk about it through the higher level review process in this video. Well, when we look at the rules, we find that we have to provide the request for an informal conference at the time of that higher level review. Now, today, at the time of this video, we do have the fortune of having a section on the VA Form 20-0996, which is our high-level review form, where that request can easily be made, so it occurs at the same time. And I'm sure we could always provide a different document at the same time we file that high-level review document. That's still an option. Me personally, I'd like to try to keep it on that form if I can, just that way nothing gets lost along the way. So ultimately, it's got to come in at the same time. Now, the VA's got a series of procedures, and we're not going to do a deep dive on that. We've been doing a lot of procedural videos, I think, recently, a few of them. And so I want to calm it down in this informal environment and not really do that read through those procedures. But do know the VA does have a series of procedures on scheduling these informal conferences, in holding these informal conferences, and everything else you can possibly think of. Now, the law does indicate that veterans only get one informal conference per higher level review. Now, of course, my favorite part about law and rules is there's always an exception. So there are some exceptions to that. Typically, if, for example, this comes from the VA guidance, I know they use the example of what they call a non-rating issue and a rating issue. So veterans, for example, if you've got a dependency issue, which the VA classifies as a non-rating issue, and that's something else to discuss really ultimately later on as a topic, but you've got the dependency issue, non-rating, you've got denied for service connection for, say, PTSD, and you're appealing that denial, then you have a rating issue there. So it could be that you have two informal conferences because those two issues are handled by different individuals, potentially, and sometimes they might be put together. I don't know. I honestly haven't submitted one like that. So, but from what I understand from the guidance is it's possible, and that would be an exception to the one informal conference per high level review. So let's give you an idea. Now, this is what I encourage others to share in the comments and so forth of their experience with the higher level review informal conferences. And I do this because I think, again, it's a section that can be improved upon. There's definitely a few different things out there, and I don't think we're fully consistent on how these are handled. So I'm going to give you a walkthrough of what informal conference typically looks for me. And then we'll address the comments and see maybe where we can make improvement or see how different it is really for everybody. So once that request is made, at some point I typically get a phone call from either the decision review officer or another VA employee to schedule that informal conference. I know VA has tried also other web-based scheduling programs and so forth, and so it kind of varies on, I guess, who's doing it and which office is doing the scheduling. But lately, it's been all phone calls for me. So I get the phone call to schedule it. Now, keep in mind, there's nothing clear cut that I can think of in the federal laws of when these should be scheduled. I think a lot of law will come down to reasonableness if it became an interpretation issue, in my personal opinion. But the VA guidance does include a time frame of when they would like to get these informal conferences scheduled. So I do recall from the guidance that it does say preferably within 7 days of the call for scheduling. Now, there are other guidance in case you're not available or myself isn't available to answer that call and schedule that time. VA has to make another attempt, so forth, and that's in there too. But the ultimate idea is that we get the informal conference scheduled. I believe the time frame is 7 days, as I may have mentioned. If the 7 days doesn't work out, there are exceptions in the procedures and so forth that allow us to extend beyond that point with circumstances where for some reason we can't do the 7-day line and we have to go a little beyond it. I don't typically find that an issue, but I do know that it is definitely something possible that can happen when there's a lot of business going on. So we get that phone call. We get it scheduled. Now what will happen is, for me, what I've experienced is I will get a phone call on that scheduled time from the decision review officer who is handling the case. Now, veterans, just for your information, in case you don't know, the decision review officer who holds the informal conference should be the one who makes the decision on your claim ultimately following that conference. So we shouldn't see a different decision review officer making a decision uh, off of an informal conference done by a different decision review officer. And I haven't had that problem, but just throwing that rule out there for you. So VA has called me right now at this point to do the informal conference, right? So what does that look like usually for me? Well, the VA has a verbiage to read. Sometimes with experience, they get it. They'll go, "Do you really want me to read this?" I've probably heard it 100 times, and you're right. I've heard it quite a few times. Early in my career, I'll tell you from the side of the table, I was like, "Yeah, I don't need to hear that. I've heard it enough. Let's just get into it." I'm going to tell you now, VA. I'm going to let you go ahead and read it because it is part of your job, and I don't want to take that away from you. I don't want anybody to say that, "Hey, you didn't read that to me. I didn't know." So I'll usually just have you read it. We'll get through it. We'll go through the motions on it. Once we do that part, yeah, I'm going to give you away some secrets from back here. I'm going to pull that curtain back. Give you a chance to be prepared for me, more so than what I've experienced. I will typically ask the VA, "Hey, can we compare notes really quick before we really get into a lot of detail from what you've seen in the file compared to what I've seen in the file, just so that we aren't wasting a lot of time talking about things that we clearly already agree on straight up front." I'm not here to waste the decision review officer's time. I'm not here to waste the veteran's time. My time, if it's wasted, that's on me. But I'm not here to waste time in the process. So I usually ask, "Hey, can we just get some quick notes? Can you kind of give me a quick note rundown of where you might be in your review and what errors you may have come across today?" Because if you've come across the error and I've come across the error, shoot, why are we going to spend 10 minutes talking about it? We're in 5 minutes when we can just say, "Okay, yeah, we agree." Check that box and let's get down to stuff we don't agree on. That's the way I like to do it, VA. I find that I get a little bit of pushback, unfortunately, on that. So just know that I like to try to work together as much as possible so we can get to a fair, speedy decision for the veteran and get those entitled benefits granted. Now, the other question, VA, I'm going to tell you that I might ask in there as well is a favorite of mine, because I'm always intrigued to know if you've taken the opportunity to review the veteran's file before you called me that day. I mean, we do see in your guidance that you should know the evidence that's in the record, and you really should have reviewed this time. But usually what I experience, unfortunately, is an answer that says, "No, I have not reviewed the file." Or here's another favorite of mine, "Well, somewhat." And what does that mean? What is some of that evidence so I know where we are in our conference? What do I need to discuss with you? I mean, I can give you the whole presentation, which I've been told that's the purpose of this conference, is just for me to give you a presentation, which I think defeats the definition of a conference, but I won't get on that soapbox. So ultimately, VA, I wanted to throw it out there. I wanted to give you the peek behind the curtain so you know what's coming right when you pick up that phone with me. I don't want you to be unprepared to talk to me. I want you and me, when I'm representing a veteran, to be able to have that professional conversation of, these are the rules, these are the laws, Were they applied correctly? Here's the evidence. Did it get considered correctly? Can we say it was actually reviewed and weighed properly? Can we go through that whole process and go, yeah, all right, this is the way it should have been decided. This is what I see. Maybe we disagree on a few things. That's fine too. But can we at least have that conversation so we can hopefully get the veteran right there in that conversation the entitled benefits that they deserve. So that's usually what happens though is it becomes a presentation and I run through all the evidence and notes. Now, because this is not recorded, veterans, the question that many are probably thinking about, I assume, is that, well, how does all this get documented in the file? Or is this something like Hamilton where nobody else was in the room? Well, I think it becomes like nobody else in the room, unfortunately, when it happened. Because there are some guidelines in the VA's manuals that talk about summarizing and putting a document into the file after the informal conference is done, which I think is great. Somehow it's documented. But I do find it really fascinating that in nearly every informal conference I've done, after we talk for 20, 30, 40 minutes, or present for 20, 30, or 40 minutes, that there's one or two sentences as a summary. Not sure how, but okay. That's just what I experienced. Now, maybe I'm just getting the wrong decision review officers. I don't know. Maybe it's just a bad day for people that day, and maybe they're just really busy and they just I don't know what happens. I'm not going to make excuses or guesses. I'm just saying this is what I observe. I'm not here to beat anybody up. I think it becomes a problem because then now it is as if the conference really never happened, or maybe what it's really communicating is VA, take this if the shoe fits, that you didn't listen to a word I said. So that's why you didn't know what to put on that piece of paper. And I really hope that's not the case. Because it shouldn't be. We're talking about the veteran here. We're here to care for them. So anyhow, but that's what, without me getting crazy on soapboxes, what the passion I have for all this is that's what an informal conference ultimately goes for me. Now, the decision that comes after, sometimes a grant, sometimes a finding of a duty to assist error, which is usually carrying on a mistake further. Sometimes it's warranted that way. Sometimes it's denial, which is still carrying on all the errors without any consideration. Sometimes it's warranted that way, and that's fine. The decision will come out, veterans, and then we'll continue our appeal process as need be. We'll continue fighting for you if I represent you here and my team represents you or works on your cases. So those are informal conferences in a nutshell from a very informal standpoint for everybody today. I want you to kind of get an idea of what the difference is between the hearing. And I think it'd be a great little discussion point, see everybody's differences. Maybe even a discussion point of how, without divulging personal information, how informal conferences are relevant for you veterans or other representatives out there or VA. Feel free to share if you feel comfortable doing so. But ultimately, yeah, that's what an informal conference is to me from my perspective. It's really should be an opportunity for two professionals to sit down and just correct the errors, work out errors, get them corrected, and get veterans the benefits that we're entitled to when the decision went the wrong direction. Whether that be service connection, an evaluation, an effective date, or whatever the issue is. But unfortunately, I do find in my practice that it becomes a presentation with lack of documentation, which really gets discouraging and gives the presentation of, I talked to myself for that 20, 30, or 40 minutes. So there you go. All right, everybody. Informal conferences, nice little informal for you. Hey, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the time that you have throughout the week and all your weekends as well, because we never know what's around the corner. And VA, I do hope your employees are doing okay with everything that's going on currently in our society and our government. So I will see you next week on our next video. And until then, have a good day.